Oh God, your sea is so great, and my boat is so small. But you give me fair winds and following seas, the sight of land and companions in the boat, and I am blessed. Amen. Please have a seat. It is one of the most magnificent moments in all of American theater. I never cease to be moved by this particular piece, whether I see it in film or live on stage. I refer to a special episode in the exquisite play, later movie, by William Gibson called The Miracle Worker. Some of you know it. I see nods. The Miracle Worker is the story of Helen Keller, that wonderful woman of wisdom, of letters, of incredible depth, who was born blind and deaf. In her early years, until she was about 5, Helen was a young woman of incredible temper, of tantrums, of struggle, of chaos, of self-destructive acting out, of violence. She was unable to speak, and part of her acting out was, of course, her inability to verbalize, to indicate her needs, to express herself. Her parents, desperate, loving her, but desperate to know how to help her, finally, after many, many efforts, found a woman herself partially sighted, a woman with her own vulnerability, Annie Sullivan, to be Helen's teacher, brilliantly played by Anne Bancroft, the incomparable Anne Bancroft. Annie Sullivan comes and begins working with Helen Keller as the miracle worker, and indeed Helen's autobiography describe. For the longest time, Annie would take Helen and help her touch items in her world and spell into Helen's hand the word that referred to her experience. Tree, meat, fork, dress. And she would spell over and over again into Helen's hand these words, hoping there would be a moment when Helen would understand that the word, the thing being spelled in the hand, referred to something in her world, something in her experience, so that she might begin to make sense of the chaos of her lived experience. Annie knew, and we know, that being able to name your reality is one of the ways that life makes sense, one of the ways that we navigate through a puzzling and frightening world by beginning to have a sense of order about it. This is the great gift of literature, of language, of theater, is that it gives us tangibility to our experiences. So Annie was desperate. Over and over she repeated this work. One day she was pumping water in the pump outside, holding Helen's hand under the stream of water coming down from the pump, spelling W-A-T-E-R, W-A-T-E-R. And Helen was just thrashing until all of a sudden, and this is one of the best moments in all of theater, you see that Helen gets it. She gets it, that what's happening in her hand bears a relationship a correspondence with what her hand feels as the water flows over it. And you can see light dawn for her sightless being. And exuberant with that understanding, she then runs all over the outdoor area. She falls to the ground and touches it, and quickly, Annie spells Ground into the hand. She goes over, she touches the step on the porch, Porch. She holds her clothing, Dress. And so it goes. It is a magnificent moment in theater. If you have a dry eye when that happens, you need to watch it more carefully next time. And by the way, parenthetically, this passage is on YouTube, of course. It's called The Water Scene from The Miracle Worker. And every time I need to be reminded of what a miracle it is that human beings understand their world, get that enlightenment, I go watch that trailer, that piece. And so the rest is history, as they say. Helen goes on to be a woman of education, of letters, of writing, of counseling, teaching, traveling. Indeed, an incredible, and one of my personal heroes, incredible person. It all began at the water pump when a moment happened for her, and she knew that what she was touching had a name, and that everything has a name. And at the end of that little scene, before things go on, she comes over and she touches Annie, tapping Annie on the shoulder. Annie takes Helen's hand, and into that outstretched hand, Annie spells teacher. 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 Pretty soon, the parents come out because they hear the cries of this exuberant Helen, and they see what's happening, and they get touched. And spelling happens into the outstretched hand. Mother. Father. And Helen falls into their arms. Because they knew, and we know, that the moment this kind of consciousness happens to us, we have made an important turn in our life as human beings. We have begun to understand that our sensory experience always points to something beyond our own selves. And that is the beginning of everything else that makes us human. It's the beginning of altruism. It's the beginning of love. It's the beginning of compassion. And so thinking of that which is outside ourselves is liberation. And that's how it happened to Helen Keller. Disciples had gone up the mountaintop with Jesus. Jesus, their companion and friend, their day-by-day, walk with, teach with, learn with companion. They didn't see who he was. Every time he tried to tell them, they kind of cleared their throats and scuffed the ground with their shoes and changed the subject. But there was this moment on the mountain, where they saw his glory. And they knew. Their eyes beheld this radiance, this person who 1 moment ago was the ordinary companion of their dirt roads, and now wrapped in glory. And in case they didn't miss it, in case they didn't quite get that part about the glory they saw, the divine wisdom spelled into their minds. This is my beloved Son. And they knew. And their lives were never the same again. Oh, they got plenty of wrong things and detours and confusions. But they knew from that point on that when they were with Jesus, living with Jesus, walking with Jesus, talking with Him, watching Him, they were seeing the work of God in this ordinary human being. What Christians refer to as the mystery of incarnation, of God in our human experience. God walking up mountains, God sitting at table with us, God at our bedside, God at our graveside, God as we cook broccoli, and God as we go to bed each night with us because of Jesus. They had that same moment on the Mount of Transfiguration that Helen Keller had. That moment of understanding, of enlightenment, of leaving one's own sensations and prejudices, one's own outlook, one's own limited perspective, and moving into a consciousness of that which is grand, that which is soaring and majestic and eternal. It happened that way to Helen. It happened that way to the disciples as they beheld Jesus on the mountain, as they heard the words spelled into the hand of their minds. These experiences we describe here await you every day. You will find them if you pay attention. Understanding will come to you, perhaps in a quiet moment, perhaps in a conversation of great depth and quality, perhaps in a moment of beholding or participating in exquisite, transcendent art, music, literature, sculpture. But those experiences will happen to you, where you will understand, you will be enlightened. And then, my dear friends, the transfiguration of Jesus will happen all over again for you. You will know what you didn't know before. You will understand something more deeply, more fully, and you will be changed. That's my promise to you. That's the promise of our gospel text for today. Not that there was once a transfiguration and it's all gone now, but because it is of God, it is in eternity. Watch for it. You'll see it. You'll experience it. Pay attention, and your understanding will soar. Amen.